Welcome to Dark Dreams. You're Getting to Be a Habit by Chuck Briggs. Torrance, California, 1994. The chorus pirouetted away in smiling symmetrical circles before an exhausted and dying Warner Baxter crumpled to the stage door stairs and lit that final cigarette. Then the screen faded to silver, and the video of 42nd Street wound to an end. Nearly as exhausted as poor Warner, having kept up with Ruby Keeler singing and tap dancing reasonably well, she thought, Stephanie collapsed to the sofa. Her face was flushed. Her breath came in short, jagged gasps, and her legs throbbed, but she was happy. With just a little bit of work to get back into shape again, in spite of the years, she knew she could still get out in front of those lights and hold an audience spellbound. If she wanted. Her family, her husband, and their adopted son had gone to the mountains, fishing for the weekend. Another opportunity for Alan to bond with the boy. Guy stuff. Her daughter by her first marriage, Gwen, was away at college. Tomorrow would bring visits from some dear old friends, but tonight was hers. Tonight Stephanie could dream some old dreams and nobody could tell her how foolish she was being. Giggling like a schoolgirl, she cantilevered up off the plush pillows and, humming the refrain from Getting to Be a Habit, twirled across the carpet before turning to the darkness and bowing to the ovation and clamoring in her mind. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's so good to be back, she said to the shadows. She really had been good once. If only she'd had the right breaks, gone to the right parties, if only Hollywood was still making musicals and Broadway more forgiving. Then, as softly as talcum powder drifting to a hardwood stage floor, a gentle brushing of one hand against the other, someone clapped. For real. Bravo, the wind seemed to whisper. But there was no wind. The air in the LA basin had been stagnant for weeks. Her head throbbing from rare exertion, Stephanie wondered if she had imagined the voice. Had she been so wrapped up in her imagination that some part of her mind had forgotten where fantasy left off and reality began? She laughed. But then the voice repeated, Bravo, Stephanie. There was no mockery. The voice was sincere. She froze, her skin clammy. Who's there? She managed. Just beyond the archway, on the opposite side of the room, in the pitch-black kitchen, a barely distinguishable figure hesitated before entering. It clung to the shadows, avoiding the intimate glow of the table lamp, so that only its long, brown hair and gray sport jacket were visible in the gloom. Matt Price. You remember me, don't you? From high school? High school. That had been 21 years ago. Stephanie's mind dug back, before the career change and before college, and into the carelessly stuffed locker of her high school memories. Matt had sat behind her in, what? American history, and had had a dreadful crush on her. She smiled, almost in spite of herself, in spite of her bewilderment. A crush. A genuine, bona fide, Andy Hardy crush. What are you doing here? She asked, too confused now to be frightened, and, to be perfectly honest, warmed just a little by the memory of admiring young men, sunshine, and fresh, seemingly endless spring mornings. Sorry, Stephanie, I didn't mean to startle you, but the back door was unlocked, and you were so absorbed in your dancing, I didn't want to disturb you, and I just had to see you again." His voice was a gentle, sighing tenor, completely without menace. "Why?" she asked, relaxing a little. "Why did you have to see me?" He didn't answer. "Well, it was nice of you to drop in, although you should have knocked before entering," she mouthed by rote, steadying herself with a practiced social incantation. She grabbed her skirt, which had been flung over the arm of the couch, and stepped into it quickly. She was wearing a leotard, but the skirt seemed absolutely necessary. "I'll turn up the lights and—" "Please don't!" Matt begged, still in a whisper, but his voice now desperate. "Okay," she thought. "Fine." They would sit in the dark. And in silence, it seemed, because for several seconds neither of them spoke. You know, I used to look forward so much to American history class." Matt sighed, finally, the words coming slowly, so slowly. "It was the high point of my day, my life, really. I love you. She cut him off with a mechanical laugh. He did use the past tense, didn't he? Loved? How nice, Matt. But tell me, what have you been doing since then? Did you ever go to art school? I remember that you liked to draw, and... No." And again the room fell silent. Through the shadows, from across the cavernous room, she could feel him staring at her, not undressing her with his eyes, as they used to say all those years ago, just staring, as if hypnotized. Stephanie lowered herself onto the chair next to the light, somehow safer than the couch. In the bedroom, upstairs, the whirring clatter of a small table fan seemed impossibly loud. "Well, don't feel bad," she forced herself to chirp. "It's a shame you never got to be an artist, but when I had my daughter Gwen, I realized that some dreams go unfulfilled. Not that I've had any regrets, mind you." The silence deepened. "And tell me, Matt, did you ever marry?" "No." And then the silence became an ocean. Stephanie could feel herself kicking for the shore. As she turned away from him, wondering if the neighbors were home, she still felt him staring at her, his eyes now focused on the back of her neck, the way he used to do all those years ago, as if young girls' necks held the mysteries of the universe. "I haven't thought about other women," he sang, whispered. "Oh, God. I've never been interested in anyone else. You're the only one I've ever loved, Stephanie." There it was, out in the open and as ugly as dandruff. "Please, I'm married," her voice brushed. "Yes, I know this seems strange," Matt went on, not hearing her, "that someone could love you enough to think about you night and day through, what's it been now, 6, 7 years? Longer, Matt. It's been, well, of course you're right. On the other side, in the void, time passes so slowly. Maybe it hasn't been that long." "What year is this, darling?" "Darling?" 1994, she spluttered. Confused, Matt's head jerked up and towards her. "What did you say?" "The year is 1994, Matt. That's what you asked." "Sorry. My mind was wandering." No doubt. It probably wandered a lot. She now noticed that he was wearing sunglasses. At night. "Très cool." "Not," Gwen would say. "You said something about the void, Matt," she pronounced, willing her voice tremble free. She tried to imagine a ball of powerful light in the center of her chest, a trick of self-confidence she had learned from reading Michael Chekhov, so many years ago. "Have you been someplace where life was more regimented? Where you had to take medication, perhaps?" "Like a sanitarium?" he giggled, and then his head turned away. He spoke to the air. "You're teasing me again, aren't you, Stephanie? That's why I like you so much. You're not just pretty and smart and stuff. You're fun. You know where I've been. You know I'm dead." "What?" "I'm dead. Remember? I did it in the summer, right after our junior year in high school. Dad kept beating me up for hours and hours. I couldn't take it anymore." True. Matt had often showed up for class with bruises on his face, a quiet, skittish boy who walked with his shoulders hunched high. Matt was avoided not only by the fashionable, popular girls on campus, but everyone, it seemed, except for Stephanie. She felt sorry for him, and so every day before class started, she would turn in her seat and chat with him a little. No big thing. Sometimes, when Matt was more than usually withdrawn, she would draw him out with a quick game of tic-tac-toe, the only game Matt seemed to understand. Sometimes she'd even let him win. Then she remembered something else, and then she felt her fingers clawing at the air. It had been in the papers that summer. Matt's neighbors had reported a horrible stench coming from his home. After breaking in, the police had found Matt's father rotting in bed with his throat slit. Matt was never seen again. It all started a couple of weeks after classes let out. Matt spoke, taking a tentative step towards her. Stephanie shrank back in her chair, and Matt froze, bewildered. His voice then lapsed into the peculiar, high-pitched stutter she remembered so well from high school. When Dad got drunk, he'd throw me out of the house. So I spent a lot of time just walking. I think I knew every square inch of Redondo Beach, even places most people don't go, like inside of the hedges at the park. That was one of my favorite places, because nobody ever bothered me there. His gaze dropped again. Do you remember Kevin Strach? He mumbled. Of course. Some people you couldn't forget, no matter how you tried. Like Stephanie, Kevin had also been an entertainer, although he had never taken a drama class. Kevin was a natural. He liked to catch Matt or some other poor loser in an isolated spot, away from the teachers, and, playing to the crowd, which would inevitably gather, eventually beat the hell out of him. A little impromptu theater of cruelty to liven up the day. Stephanie had seen it happen, although, like most of her friends, she never joined the laughing, taunting crowds that gathered. There was no need to watch that particular offering because she already knew the ending. Matt had no fight in him. His father had seen to that. Kevin's little performance piece would end only after Matt consented to tie Kevin's shoelaces, or carry his books, or undergo some other ritual humiliation in front of the crowd. Although she told herself that it was unimportant, that any kind of violent act would only lead to more violence, in the back of her mind, she wished that Matt would fight back, just once, even if he lost. Maybe then Kevin would have left him alone. At least, that's how it worked in the movies. Matt went on, his voice climbing high and out of control. It was in the evening, just before sunset. Kevin and his friends happened to see me go into the park and followed, but I ducked into the hedges when they weren't looking. I guess they were bored because they didn't go away. They just kept hunting for me. I couldn't go home because Dad was still drunk, and so I hid in the hedges with my comic books. That had been a slip. She remembered he always had an adventure comic tucked away in a notepad or a hip pocket, but he was self-conscious about them and never wanted anyone, least of all Stephanie, to know that he still read them. But she could understand. If you're a social outcast, nerdy and timid like Matt, the fantasy of stripping down to your long johns, leaping over tall buildings in a single bound, and in the end, winning the affections of the ubiquitous, scantily clad female fair would hold a very powerful attraction. His voice rose even higher. Have you ever noticed how quiet it gets right before the sun drops out of sight? When the sky is all crimson? He asked desperately.